Good evening, everyone, and welcome to night 2 of our Erie County Democratic Party Candidate Forum series. Last night, you heard from our candidates for County Executive and County Council, and tonight we will hear from the candidates for Erie Mayor and Erie City Council. I want to thank all of our candidates for taking time out of their busy campaign schedule to be with us and share their perspective with you tonight. It is an introduction for the viewers watching on YouTube to each of our candidates, and I encourage you to search and seek out each one of these candidates either on social media or on their campaign websites. Joining me tonight to help facilitate these conversations are Selena King, the chairwoman of the Erie County Democratic Party Black Caucus. Representing labor from the Erie Central Labor Council, we have with us Jack Lee and Ron Oliver. Representing our LGBTQIA plus caucus, Mr. Roger Walbert is with us tonight. And representing the Young Dems, we have Ms. Simonique Dietz. We look forward to their questions. The order for this evening will go like this. Candidates will receive questions from one of our questioners at a time. Each candidate will answer the same question. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then we will move on to the next question. At the conclusion of our first round of questioning, candidates will have 90 seconds to offer a closing statement. We'll begin tonight with our mayoral candidates. And we're joined by incumbent Mayor Joe Schember and his challengers, Mr. Tom Spagel and Sydney Zimmerman. So I'm going to ask our city council candidates to stand by and hang on, and we'll bring you back into the conversation here very shortly. With our first question tonight, we'll begin with Miss Selena King.
Thank you so much, Chairman Wirtz, and thank you to all the candidates for being with us tonight. My question deals with racial equity. Racial equity, we know, is an outcome, specifically the state where race no longer predicts outcomes in health, housing, wealth, education, crime, life expectancy, etc. Where do you feel race equity ranks in the problems facing Erie, and why?
And our first response will go to Mayor Joe Schember.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Selena. That's a very good question. And I can tell you from my team, ending racism in Erie is our #1 priority. As I've said often, if I accomplish nothing else as mayor of Erie, I want to eliminate racism and prejudice, because I just can't imagine what a great city we would be. I can't even imagine it if everyone felt welcomed and valued for what I believe are the unique talents and skills that everybody has. Racism has existed in our country and in our community for centuries, literally. But that is something that I want to turn around really more than anything else. We've done a number of things. I think probably one of the most positive things we've done in the last three years and about a quarter is to create the Police Athletic League, which puts about 80 of our police officers in almost daily contact with middle school and high school public school students here in Erie, the majority of which are minorities. And I can tell you, I experienced the results of that in December when Tom Lennox, who is an African-American police officer who runs that, took me around to visit 19 of the kids that participate in that program. They were taking small Christmas gifts to these kids on the Lower East Side of Erie. And of course, that was when the pandemic was really surging. We all wore masks and tried to social distance. But every one of those 19 kids had to hug every one of the 6 police officers that were there. And it was Tom Lennox and 5 young white police officers. I could see what had the relationships that had been built there. And it just really lifted my heart and made me believe, yes, we can overcome racism in Erie. It's not going to happen quickly. It's not going to happen overnight. But a large number of those kids, when asked, also said they would like to become police officers when they grow up. And that is something we really have to overcome because of the treatment many minorities have received over the years. They've chosen not to want to be police officers or want to stay distant from police officers. These kids are being changed, and it's making just a huge difference. We also have the Better Together Council, which is composed of not only African Americans, but also minorities, new Americans, immigrants and refugees. And again, this is a council that's having great conversation and really kind of putting things together to have everyone accepted in the community, regardless of the color of their skin, their national origin, their religion, their sexual orientation, or whether they're a man or a woman. Because, frankly, women do get discriminated against a lot too for jobs here in Erie. I've said a lot, and I think I'll stop there, Jim.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Our next respondent is Tom Spagel.
Hello, Selena, and thank you for asking that question. We are at a very challenging time right now. I think that President Trump screwed up a whole lot with the racial divide in America, and fortunately, I hope that we're on the way with Biden's leadership that we can really repair a lot of that nationally. Now, locally, of course, that's how we have to think. I'm very blessed with my background being in the military. That is really a great way for social reform to really start, and it works very, very well. I served 25 years in the military, and I had the pleasure of working with a very diverse group of everybody in the military, and that's just the way it works, and it works out very, very well. But more locally here at our business in Stanganelli's, we employ probably between 35 and 40 people, depending. And our shop is at 25th and Ash. When we first started our business, we could be anywhere. When we first started our business, we were 25th and East Avenue. We moved to 25th and Ash. And almost all of our business at the time was local. Now most of our business is outside of town. So we could move not only outside of Erie, but we could move outside of Pennsylvania. But we choose to employ our employees for a reason at 25th and Ash. if you come by at any time, we may only have 4 or 5 cars in the parking lot because almost all of our employees are from the neighborhood of 25th and Ash. They almost all walk to work. And with that, we probably have, I don't know, I guess I haven't really counted per se, but at least half of our workforce, almost half of our workforce are people of color. At this time, we employ, I don't even know the number of Blacks, of Hispanics, of homosexual individuals that are valuable to us. And they just work out well. They're valued members of our employee, and I'm glad that we get to work with them. And we want to continue to work with that. And a lot of people say that they're going to do this and they're going to do that. Well, we are practicing, and we've been practicing that for the last 28 years because it just works out well for us. And then it's a school district. I know that we're trying to employ as many people that represent our constituents, if you will, our student base. And I think that works out well, and we need to certainly have more of that. And I will do everything possible to make sure that that continues to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And up next, we have Sydney Zimmerman.
Can people hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. Sorry, was having difficulties. I'm wondering if the question can be repeated just one more time. I want to make sure I get it in its entirety.
Sure. Selena, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Race equity is an outcome, specifically the state where race is no longer an outcome that is predicted in health, housing, wealth, education, crime, life expectancy, etc. Where do you feel race equity rates in Erie, and why?
Thank you, Selena. Yes, I greatly appreciate this question. I think that it ranks at the top. I wrote out a list of platform issues, and at the very top of my platform issues is systemic racism. Systemic racism is more than just interpersonal racism. It is the racism that has been institutionalized. Unfortunately, in Erie, this reaches all corners of our lives. The corners that Selena mentioned: housing, education, health, crime, and our criminal justice system, how folks are treated. It's all based off of race. And due to the, I'm sorry, I got a Zoom message. And because of this, because of its relation to how it touches everything, that is why I listed it as my number one concern. Mayor Schember noted that his campaign or his administration's number one goal is to end racism. I think that that is an impossible goal for any 4-year administration. I think that we can work to dismantle systemic racism with policies that ensure that folks are treated with equity. I think that something like community benefit agreements that ensure that a certain amount of Black and Brown folks are hired on projects that use things like LERTA or CRISs can help to break down the barriers of systemic racism. But it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of thoughtfulness, and a lot of energy to ensure that we are, in fact, breaking down those barriers. We cannot just send police officers into Black and Brown communities and expect for it to dissolve racism, especially when more contact from police officers in this community tends to have the crime rate go up. And not because crime is increasing in these communities, but because of police officers' involvement in these communities. If white neighborhoods were policed as much as Black neighborhoods, we would see more similar crime rates. And I agree that women are discriminated as well as Black folks. And so this discrimination only goes up if you are a Black woman, right? We talk about the pay difference between men and women. It goes up if you're a Black or Latina woman. And I agree with Mr. Spagel, which I found his comment to be interesting because from what I understood, he had supported Trump at one time. But Trump did screw up or excuse me, he did not screw up. He highlighted the screw ups in our nation's history, right?
Sydney, I'm going to have to
when-
stop you there. We're well over time. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And our next question will come from organized labor, and I believe we're going to Mr. Ron Oliver.
No, I thought Jack was going to take it.
Okay, that's right. Okay, thanks. Jack Lee. Can you unmute yourself there, Jack? Jack, you're muted.
May take it if he's having problems.
Here he
How's
is.
that?
We got him now. All right. Thank you very much.
Doggone computers.
That's all right.
It's showing my age, Jim. Thank you all for being here. And I'm Summit Township Supervisor and President of Erie Crawford Central Labor. And I'm a 35-year roofer. So with that being said, I would like to know how the candidates feel about the push for the PRO Act from the AFL-CIO. The PRO Act has a lot of pieces and parts, and the part I'll ask about is, do you support OSHA? And as long as I'm saying that, I will also say I was a 10-year instructor for OSHA certification. And some people are afraid of OSHA because of vicious rumors, but I just want everyone to know OSHA is mostly common sense. Like in the roofing industry, would be tying off your ladder so it don't blow down, having it extend 3 foot over the edge so you have a handle to hold on to, wearing a hard hat when there's a crane above. And the main thing here is every worker goes home safe and healthy, and hopefully you never have a casualty. What are your thoughts on supporting OSHA?
And we'll begin this time with Tom Spagel. Mr. Spagel.
Jack, thank you for joining us. As a small business owner, we employ a number of people, and we try to do everything right as much as we certainly can. And one of those things that we do right is we have a handbook of how we operate within our business. And when I have this conversation with every new employee, the very first thing we start off with, and the very last thing we end with, is safety. There's absolutely nothing more important than the safety of our employees, safety of whether you're a roofer or anywhere else or whatever else work that you do. Now with that is we've had employees get hurt in the past. We've had one time a finger got stuck in a sheeter, which means nothing to you guys, but we use that type of stuff all the time. It's a big press. And my stomach was quite literally ill from that. And we know there's nothing more important than the safety of our employees. Having said that, I absolutely support OSHA. I don't care what the cost is, certainly within reason. You have to be able to protect the employees. It just makes sense. To be perfectly honest, I don't even know why this is a conversation, because it's just an intuitive mindset that we should all have, is safety comes first, and then making whatever product or completing whatever service you actually do. Overall, I'm very pleased that our union atmosphere in Erie is a positive one. We've worked with them, the school district, quite a bit. My father was a Teamster for his whole career. And I just know that we are better off because of the union issues that come up, particularly something as simple but way important as OSHA. So thank you for bringing this up.
All right, next respondent, Ms. Sydney Zimmerman.
Hi there, Jack. Thank you for your question. First and foremost, unions are very important. I myself have knocked doors to ensure that folks get to have conversations about why unions are important, why we should support them, to ensure that we have good relationships between employers and employees, and we have measures to protect employees. And OSHA is one of those measures to protect employees. I remember going to the break room and reading over the big plastic laminated posters that detail OSHA measures and why they're important. You know, I remember being taught how to use a box cutter to ensure my safety, and to also make sure that the business runs smoothly, because if you can't protect your employees, then you're not protecting your business. So I definitely support OSHA, Jack, and I appreciate your question. I do want to go back to Ms. Selena King's question. I want to go back to the question about race equity and how important is it. You know, Mayor Schember mentioned that there have been a lot of great conversations regarding race and equity, but I think that we need to start having policies that put some teeth to these conversations to ensure that our community members are protected. You know, community members ranging from the Black children that go to school in our Erie school district. You know, we don't have enough Black teachers inside our school district, and this causes students, Black students, you know, it's one of the reasons that they get disciplined at a higher proportion than white students, particularly Black boys. And this feeds into the school to prison pipeline that we have a problem with in our society. You know, and then there's also issues when it comes to health. I just learned from a friend of mine a story that they had as a patient, where they were told that they had a brain bleed, and then they were discharged from the hospital. Now, as a Black man, that is having that kind of experience with our healthcare system is not uncommon, and that extends into women's experiences as well. We have a very high mortality rate for Black mothers giving birth in hospitals, and part of this is the fact that there is a false narrative of pain for Black folks, and it causes them to get treated in an inequitable way at our hospitals. So we need policies that protect folks all the way from our school children to adults going to the hospital.
Thank you, Sydney.
And
Mayor,
that's
Mayor Schember, your opinion on OSHA.
Here. I believe in and support our unions, and I fully support OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. That's very important, as Jack Lee described it. And Jack, thanks for that question as well. This is extremely important, and with our 4 unions at City Hall, I fully support OSHA. It's a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Since the mayor left some time on the table, I'm going to invoke some privilege here and ask a quick follow-up. OSHA does not currently apply to municipal employees in Pennsylvania. Representative Harkins has introduced a bill in the State House for several sessions now, trying to get municipal employees covered under OSHA. I'll start with you, Mayor, and then go back around. In a one-word answer, I'm just looking for a yes or no. Will you help to advocate for Representative Harkins' bill to provide OSHA protections for municipal employees?
Yes. Did you hear me?
I got you. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Mr. Spiegel.
Absolutely.
And Sydney Zimmerman. We lost your audio, but we got your head nod. So we have you there.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. And Jack, thank you for that question. Our next presenter is from the Erie County Democratic Party, LGBTQIA caucus, and Roger Wolbert will be asking the next question.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, candidates. And my question is stemming around the notion of cultural competency training. So my question is, to what extent did you participate in LGBTQIA plus cultural competency training? And what types of training would you recommend for city staff?
And we'll begin responses with Sydney Zimmerman.
Thank you so much for your question. So when it comes to competency training, I myself have not received competency training for the LGBTQI plus community. I think it is important though. And so when it does come to that kind of training, I would like to reach out to the Human Rights Campaign so that we could have training from their All Children, All Families program. I think that is a good first step in getting us up to date with competency training, but I think that it's more than training. And Dr. Titus did go ahead and go into this last night. I would like to build on it. I think that we need policy behind these trainings to ensure that we are actually walking the walk and not just talking the talk to one another. So to ensure domestic partnership benefits for all city employees, I would push for an ordinance similar to one that was passed in Harrisburg and their city council in 2018. It's ordinance number 13-2008. And I would also support county efforts for a similar measure. I think that there should also be a city non-discrimination policy for all workers and contractors within the city. We could model an ordinance after Lancaster City Council's ordinance that was passed this year. It's ordinance number 06-2021. But I think, again, that it's important that we are not just painting crosswalks with rainbows, but we're actually instituting policies that protect this community and uplift this community so that for future generations, they don't have to run into those issues and we can keep building on those successes.
Thank you, Sydney. Mayor Schember.
Thank you. We implemented LGBTQIA plus competency training for our police after the incident that happened back on May 30th of last year. And I was able to sit in and participate in that. It was run by Dr. Rich McCarty from Mercyhurst University. And it really helped all of us, I think, understand better how little the differences are really between us, regardless of your nationality, the color of your skin, your gender, your religion you practice, or your sexual preference. We're all human beings and we're 99.9% the same. So this LGBTQIA, which we want to provide that to all police. We think that's an important group at City Hall to have that understanding. We were slowed down by COVID-19 when we couldn't have large groups together. I'm hoping within the next few months here, COVID-19 comes under control, we get enough people vaccinated that we can start doing that kind of training before. I can tell you it was very moving for me to go through and experience that training. I really believe every person has prejudices, but a lot of us don't really even understand the prejudice that we have until somehow we're made aware of it. And that's the benefit of this LGBTQIA plus type of training. And I encourage everyone to take advantage of having that kind of training anytime you can finally get it. Also, I think conversion therapy is something that's very good to go through to implement. That's all I've got. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Tom Spagel.
Yes, and whoops, hold on, something popped up here. Can you see me?
We got
Yes.
Got it. All right, Roger, thank you for asking that. As far as my personal competency training, again, I have the benefit of serving 25 years in the military. And with that, we get almost to some extent overbriefed on just about everything. And as I alluded to earlier, the military really is the training for a lot of the training ground for a lot of social of programs. So I've received and given a number of training for cultural awareness and training. Certainly I've given it on certain different areas that have not been LGBTQIA, but have received it. That is something that we need to be more proactive. As Mayor Schember said, he was being reactive after an event that occurred. We need to be more proactive with our training. I do think that we should, through the course of our continuing education, that we need to do at all levels. I don't care whether you're a secretary or you're a mayor or anywhere in between, we need to have our continuing education as we do it at our business. There's always more to know. I don't care whether you graduate from college or go right to the workforce out of high school. We need to have continuous education, and this is certainly one of those, unquestionably, that we need to do in today's society. And I also think that this needs to start not only just within our employees, which is, again, I think that's just a foregone conclusion that it just makes sense to do. I think we need to have this type of education throughout the curriculum in the schools as well. Maybe when, say, Mayor Schember was in high school, and even myself, this wasn't really an issue that came to light. It is now. And this is something that we need to ensure that our children are fully aware of and are comfortable with. And I do agree with Sydney that as far as when it comes to the benefits and so forth, I absolutely agree that any couple that is married should have all the same rights, regardless of their identity. Again, these are things that I just think are intuitive, and it just makes sense to me. And I can't understand why we're not currently doing that. So thank you for the question.
All right. And Roger, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, this is for the mayor, actually. So Mayor, we appreciate the training you've talked about with the police, et cetera. But could you elaborate perhaps a little bit on the comment about conversion therapy and implementing that?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate you asking that, Roger, because I misspoke with what I said there. Certainly the LGBTQ training is great. We actually outlawed conversion therapy, which that type of therapy is trying to convert somebody from one form of one way they are to a different way. And that is definitely wrong. And we actually outlawed that in the city a couple of years ago. So I apologize for misspeaking there.
All right. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Mayor, for the clarification. And our final question of the evening goes to our representative from the Young Democrats, Miss Simonique Dietz. Simonique, could you please unmute yourself? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I have multiple questions, but my first question is, with the massive redevelopment projects happening in Erie and new businesses coming in, while offering low and even minimum wages as the cost of living increases, what is your proposal to help businesses develop here while giving Erie citizens a chance to support themselves and their families?
And Mayor Schember, first response to you.
Okay, and I'm not sure exactly what new development you're referring to. I think not all new development is all minimum wage jobs. There certainly are some, and often that's a job you have to start in. I can tell you, based on my experience, my first real full-time job here in Erie was as a teller. It was Marine Bank at the time. It's now PNC. And I had no financial background. I had no training in banking. And I was just kind of desperate for a job. And I made about $7,000 a year in that job, which is like $3.45 an hour. I was living at home at the time. I was a young guy, so I didn't need a lot of money. But what I did was I got very interested because I learned that banking is a people job. You know, there's no products. It's you're not manufacturing anything or making anything. You know, you're just providing service to people. And I found that that's what I really loved. And the bank at the time paid for your college education. So I went back and got an MBA, Master's in Business Administration, for Gannon in the evening while I was working full-time at the bank during the day. And after about a year of doing that, the bank saw all the money they were spending on my education and gave me opportunities, and found that I really loved the job. And that's what I would really encourage people when you start in a job. Obviously, some jobs, there's not much chance to advance. But if you're in a job where you have a chance to advance, try to learn, build relationships, get the kind of education that you need, and you can advance in that job and show people that you're a good worker, that you cooperate, you work together, and you can advance. I think for most people, that first job is going to be relatively low money, but if you approach it right, if you study and get the education you need. And if you show that you're good at working together with other people, which is what I really enjoy doing, and I value all that time, you will advance in your job.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Spiegel?
Yes, Dominique, thank you for asking this question. Again, I'm an employer, so I stay attuned to this issue quite a bit. One, and I certainly understand the mayor's position, but not everybody has the opportunity that he had. I wish that everybody could go to college and get a master's degree. I did all that as well. I only had that opportunity because I went through the military. My family did not have the financial wherewithal to send me to college. Neither one of my parents even graduated from high school. So I had to make my way to get to that point. The minimum wage in Pennsylvania is an absolute embarrassment. For anybody to think that you can even pay rent on $7.25 an hour is absolutely embarrassing. So what I think that we should do, again, I think it should be tiered in a couple of different tiers. For instance, and I've said this before, my son who works at our shop, he's a very good worker. In fact, he's a hell of a worker for a 14-year-old kid. There's not a chance that he is worth, $15, $18 an hour. So high school kids are one thing, but it's something else when you're trying to raise a family. So we should have a balance between age and income, for one. Two, we also should really factor in the cost of living. We know that Philadelphia cost of living is considerably higher than Erie's. So I don't think we should necessarily have a state minimum wage, but I do think that we should have a minimum wage that is tomorrow. If it were up to me, it should be, if I could, wave a magic wand, be at least $10 an hour and go up incrementally from there. The small businesses in particular that will be hurt the most, they have to have opportunity to react and make sure that they can work with the wages so the products can be priced appropriately, and so they're not put out of business. Because unfortunately, it will put a lot of people out of business if it is too high too soon. I do think that our wages right now, particularly at our shop, I think that we provide our employees, which is a relatively low skill position for them. We ensure that we pay competitive wages. Our average rate right now is between $12 and $13 an hour. And that's for somebody with a GED education. We think that that's pretty good. And I think that is very, very relevant, and it should be a priority for as many people as possible and many businesses as possible to pay a fair and living wage to all employees. So thank you for asking.
Cindy Zimmerman.
I apologize. Being last, you can get kind of lost in the question. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure.
There? Thanks.
Yeah. I said, with the massive redevelopment projects happening in Erie, or just redevelopment projects happening in Erie, and new businesses coming in while offering low and even minimum wages as the cost of living increases, what is your proposal to help businesses develop here while giving Erie citizens a chance to support themselves and their family?
Thank you, Dominique. So I think it's very important to note the first part of your question is as it relates to development, right? We do have lots of development happening in Erie right now, especially due to things like LERTA and the possibility of CRIS coming to Erie. So with lots of local tax dollars, right, going into these developments to help support their startup costs, it's very important that we protect workers and we protect workers' wages, right? And one of the ways that we can protect our community and the workers in it is by ensuring that we have community benefit agreements attached to these development projects when they're benefiting from community dollars, especially when they're projects that are over $1 million, right? That way we are holding these developers who have the money to spend big bucks on development to a higher standard than what our state's minimum wage does currently, to ensure that our workers are getting paid equitably, especially since our community is part of the investment team for these developments because they're using public dollars, right? And so community benefit agreements can have stipulations that require local hires, right, to ensure that our local workers are getting these jobs. It can ensure job quality, which would ensure that they get benefits like health insurance, pensions, retirement, Social Security, workers' comp, unemployment. And we could also ensure that they are getting fair wages, right? So they can either do prevailing wage for like construction jobs to ensure that they're getting the most bang for their buck as workers. And for those that aren't construction jobs that wouldn't fall under that prevailing wage, we can ensure that folks are getting 175% of the minimum wage, right? So that we can have living wages that support folks regardless of if they have a family or not.
Thank you, Sydney. That concludes our first round of questionings, our round of questioning, I should say, for our mayoral candidates. And now we're going to move into closing statements, in which each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement for our viewers. And since the last question went to Mayor Schember, we'll begin with Mr. Spagel.
Yes, and thanks again, folks, for allowing us the opportunity to have this forum. Again, we have a number of issues that we need to contend with. More than anything else, our loss of population is significant. And really, our loss of population is due to a lack of opportunities, and we need to change that. We have a loss of revenue in Erie. That is huge for us. When you take a look at our finances right now, well, let's assume that the Mayor Schember wins again. The day that he steps out of office, we will be at least $9, maybe $12 million in debt. That's a fact. Look at PFM, look at any projections. That is at least $9 to $12 million in debt. When you start looking at the real finances, we are headed right to Act 47. It means we're going to be a distressed city. It takes a lot to get out of that. And I know that just from working in the school district. We've been essentially a distressed school district, and we're just getting out of that now, and it's a huge, huge burden to bear. I can go all day long about how my grandchildren will have to pay for this water deal, for the next 40 years, which, and most people that I speak to that understand finances say this is one of the very worst deals the city of Erie has entered into, and certainly my lifetime. We've lost our identity. Whether it is Roar on the Shore, whether it is the block parties, whether it's 8th grade Tuesdays. I just know my personal family and friends and people from all over come to town to enjoy all that we have to offer. And we don't have those opportunities to do that anymore. So once again, I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to all of your support going forward. Thank you.
Sydney Zimmerman, your closing statement.
Thank you again for this opportunity to speak, not only to the Democratic Committee, but to all of Erie. I just want to restate that the reason that I'm running to be mayor for Erie is that it's been long overdue. Too many of Erie's leaders keep settling for plans that support the status quo rather than work to bring tangible change to our community. And unfortunately, short-sighted decisions, they are stripping the city of our greatest resources and assets, like our lake, while endangering residents and their future. This is because we're ignoring the will of the people. We're failing to cultivate our city's talent and creativity because we're not listening to our community. We're not asking for their opinion. And so I would like to invite everybody to my listening session on Sunday. You can find me on Facebook, Sydney Zimmerman for Mayor. We are going to be talking about community input and accessibility and equity in development, so that we can hear from community members on how they would like our city to be shaped moving forward. Because again, for far too long, their voices have been cast aside and not listened to. And this has caused us to get into the mess that we're in currently, where we're not spending money wisely, we're not investing in the future of our community. And so please join me on Sunday at 2 p.m. for that conversation. I would love to hear what folks have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. Mayor, you have the last word of the forum. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And you can hear me okay, can't you? Okay. I want to cover 7 things, if I can fit them all into 90 seconds real quickly. First thing is we implemented LERTA. These are accomplishments my administration has in our first 3.25 years. We had to negotiate with the school district and the county to come up with this LERTA. And they insisted we have a measurement criteria, like how are we going to know in 2 years it's been successful? And what we agreed on would at least 20 million. If we didn't have at least 20 million in LERTA, we would do something different. So far, in the first year and 9 months, we've had 85 million in new LERTA applications, new residential and commercial development in Erie. Second, I created a planning department, which the city never had a planner. I hired Kathy Rosdick, and she created a planning department, not by adding the employees to staff, but by combining 4 existing departments and changing their orientation. Third, PFM identified 3 major financial problems. We are on the path to solving all of them and making the city much more financially stable than it's ever been before. We solved the pension problem, which was costing city taxpayers $1.65 million every year. And would have continued, things doubled, our pension costs doubled in 6 years. That stopped, and starting in 2029, because of what we did, the cost of our pensions will drop by $4.9 million. I know I'm already at 90 seconds. I apologize for that. There's much more I'd like to present, but I'll use other opportunities to do that.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being conscientious about the time there. And I will invite our viewers to seek out Mayor Joe Schember and his other folks on the ballot here, Tom Spagel and Sydney Zimmerman, and encourage you to seek out their websites and look them up on social media and find out what their positions are on the many important issues facing the city of Erie. I'd like to thank all 3 of our candidates for taking the time off of a busy campaign trail to join us for this first hour of our City Candidates Forum. And I'd like to thank Selena King, Jack Lee, Roger Walbert, and Simon A. Dietz for the questions to our mayoral candidates. Our presenters will hang with us, and we're going to bring Ron Oliver into the conversation as well from the Erie Crawford Central Labor Council. To our mayoral candidates, you're welcome to stay with us in this conversation, but I know it's often a busy time, especially midweek here. So if you have to log off, we certainly understand. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll now move into our city council portion of the forum. Tonight, joining us as candidates for Erie City Council, we have incumbent councilwoman Liz Allen. We have Corey DiLoretto, Jasmine Flores, Elspeth Cayley, Chuck Nelson, Ken Tate, Maurice Troop, and Marcus Yulee. I want to thank all of our city council candidates for being here with us. This is an important time in the campaign. We're just about 6 weeks away from Election Day, and mail ballots start hitting doors later this week. So what a better time to have a conversation. For the voters that haven't gotten a chance to know you, this will be just a start. And I encourage the voters again to seek out each one of you. Most of our city council candidates do have Facebook pages, and some have websites as well. And so they are quite accessible through their social media, and I'm sure eager to converse with you over social media and email as well, and out in the community when you find them. Because of the size of the pool of candidates here, we're going to limit responses to these questions to 90 seconds. I know that's not a lot of time to get into all that you would like to with these important questions that are being raised here. However, again, it is just a foundation for viewers to go and decide where they should seek seek more information. So without further ado, the first question of our City Council Candidates Forum will go to Selena King, the chairwoman of our Erie County Democratic Party Black Caucus. Selena, take it away.
Thanks, Chairman Wirtz. Hello to all of our City Council candidates. Again, thank you for being with us tonight. My question again is on race equity. With diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging being such major topics right now, how do you plan on addressing these issues with the communities that have impacted them the most, where the burden does not fall on those community members?
And we will be, just for clarification, because of the number of candidates and the limited number of questions, we will be going in alphabetical order in response to each question. So Liz Allen, you are up first.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Selena. I think that equity and inclusion is the #1 issue facing the city of Erie. I have tossed around the idea of maybe that we need some type of equity and inclusion commission to actually examine, people have talked about policies. Can you hear me okay? And I'm basing that on some information that a friend of mine in suburban Milwaukee gave me, where they created an equity and inclusion commission. I think a really good start would be for the city council to adopt the racism is a public health issue statement that the county council has adopted. I'm on the library advisory board, and I've seen how the library has taken that language and taken it beyond just these are words to look at how the library is doing in terms of hiring, programming, and the type of collections. I think we have a good model there to figure out how to be more equitable and inclusive. And it has to be intentional.
All right. Thank you, Liz. Corey DiLoretto, you are up next. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? Corey DiLoretto, City Council candidate. So what my idea would be is to make sure that everyone from the city is included. Neighborhoods, wards who don't have neighborhood coalitions, Frontier Association, our West Bayfront, places like that. I want to make sure that everyone has a neighborhood coalition, and that there's of course an odd number. So if they were to vote on things, it would be proper that way. And from those neighborhood coalitions, I would like to have one board of people of one coalition. So that would be one member from each of those neighborhoods, right? And that board would report to city council. And so we would hear from every single neighborhood. We would understand what their needs are, what's affecting them the most, what's being done correctly, what's not being done correctly. And so that's where I would start. It's very important that everybody has a voice and their voices are heard and heeded too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Corey. Jasmine Flores, you are up.
Can you repeat the question, please? I know it's to do with equity and inclusion, but I don't know exactly how you guys worded it.
Sure. Selena, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Of those topics that you mentioned, how would you specifically address these issues with the communities that have been impacted the most by them, so that the burden of addressing them does not fall on those community members?
I know that as a Latina woman in the city of Erie, I've never felt represented or included in a lot of the conversations that have happened. As a Lower East Side resident, a lot of the development that has occurred has affected my neighborhood that I grew up in. And I know that a lot of community members who grew up in that area as well feel the same. There's a detachment for Lower East Side residents. The lack of representation has made us not want to be involved in the local politics. And that has definitely caused a lot of issues as far as the equity and us having the representation in the school district, on the police department, the firefighters, and inside City Hall. I think that when we have people who look like the community that they are
going to feel like they should be in those spaces. They make the space feel hostile. Sometimes you're one of the only brown or black faces in the room. So we need to make sure that anything that we're doing has policy change. I think that the community members don't feel like we're represented because we see it every day. I've never really had much representation, and it's something that unless we really address Erie's current financial state and us being the poorest zip code for African Americans, well, we're the worst place for African Americans to live, and we're the poorest zip code in the country. So these two facts aren't going to change unless we have actual equity and representation. So that's how I feel.
Thank you, Jasmine. Elspeth Cayley?
Thank you, Selena and Jim. So I have a few ideas on how to go about this, by bringing positivity into the community. We have a lot of the COVID relief money coming into the community. When you talk about equity, things like a grocery store and a food desert, that's creating equity. We can do an aggressive marketing campaign with some of that money to attract grocery stores to the neighborhoods where we need them. That will also provide employment for people who live in those neighborhoods. The other thing is with the relief bill, the American Rescue Plan, there are cities across the nation that are implementing one of them is called a CAHOOTS program. So basically, instead of sending police officers to mental health issue occurrences or substance use disorder occurrences or checking in for just general health and safety, they send other first responders to these 911 calls. And through the relief plan, we could get up to 85% of the money reimbursed to the city if we implemented plans like that. So we're protecting citizens where we don't necessarily need an armed police officer to show up at this call. When it comes to housing equity, there's a lot of dilapidated housing that people are actually renting in the city. We need better inspection program for the housing units that we do have, and we need to make sure that those housing units are priced fairly and that we are creating more, building more and rehabbing housing that's mixed income, so it's welcoming for everyone and everyone has an opportunity to buy homes and rent homes that are safe and affordable.
Thank you. Chuck Nelson?
I just want to point out that one of the phrases she used was economic burden, and that's really the racial issue that we face, the inequity we face is historic policies that have left Erie burdened by that. Redlining, 100 years we've seen where the city has seen disinvestment because it started 100 years ago with looking at my block and seeing in the notes a couple Negroes and then in the next neighborhood a few Negroes. And this is the notes written in 1923 to determine how the federal government would invest in its people. This is why we've seen the white flame. We haven't been able to address that, but I think I actually have some solutions for some of these problems. The first would be a land value tax. When Harrisburg implemented it, the most disinvested communities saw 90% of the houses with a reduction in taxes. There was row houses with a large Puerto Rican population. They did a great Hispanic crossover promotion of the project. When Jasmine with her narrative shows pictures of her grandmother's house and how it had been leveled, well, where's the financial incentive to keep it? If you cut the tax on the house itself in half and you increase it on the land, there's no reason for a speculator to eliminate a house and to build land. There's less reason to extract value out. I love what Elspeth was saying. She was talking about CAHOOTS. Denver has a STAR program, they call it, where they send a social worker and a paramedic to a lot of these sites. There's opportunities around us to implement these. It's just a matter of being able to research those spots and bring them to the table. This is a matter of bringing solutions. And I think at this point we can see the problems, but solutions are where we need to have city council focusing.
Thank you. Ken Tate?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And thank you, Selena, for that question. I think that it's monumentally important that we address the issues that, I mean, for decades have caused both a societal perception of minorities, for my Black people, for new Americans in the city to be burdened by this perception of being less than or not being a contributing factor to this city. As Ms. Allen highlighted earlier, we need to address racism in this city, in this county, as a public health issue. And with that, we need to really focus on what the demographics of our city are, what the makeups of our neighborhoods are, what issues have come up over the years with the lead in paint and renovations that have not come to pass, the poor housing and poor attention to the lead in our water systems, or the poor attention to the school system, the schooling in certain areas. We need to recognize that all of these issues are contributing to the health of our city, the health of our residents, the health of our city environment. And that, coupled with all the redlining results that have compounded for years, it all must be addressed by policies that specifically target those issues. And City Council needs to focus on those particularly.
Thank you, Ken. Maurice Troop.
Thanks, Jim and Selena, for the question. When I think of this question, I think of myself, because I am what this question is pertaining to. I grew up in a strong single mother home, living in poverty, 6 kids. And it all starts with the belief system. That starts before any policy. Our people in our community don't believe anymore. That's the main thing. They don't care what policy you put in place. They don't believe. They believe that when they jump, the ceiling is right here. I know, because in my classroom, when I was teaching 5th grade, a young Black girl told me, "Mr. Troop, I never thought Black people did anything good in life," because I taught them about their history. Okay. Also, when I started my band, the Breeze Band, older Black members of the community would tell me, "You'll never get in that place. You'll never get in that event. An all Black band can't make it in this city." So some things that I would do, I agree with Liz Allen, because as an educator, recently I trained 160 staff members on equity and inclusion right in the school. So I would examine, first of all, what's going on already. What are the current policies? Okay, let's see if they're working or not. Okay, if I'm gonna talk to the affected people. So let's get their voices, see what they think. Not just older people. I'm talking about 20-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 60-year-olds. Okay, we got to look at all the voices. And also, like I said, if there's communities outside of Erie that are successful, we can model what they're doing also and bring it to Erie. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus Ewell.
Good afternoon, evening, and thank you, Jim and Selena, for the question. I think that many of us who are looking to move Erie forward are thinking along the same lines. So I will not try to reiterate anything that anyone else has said, other than I will say this: I agree that if there are solutions that have been promulgated outside of Erie, we should look at them as options, but we need Erie solutions for Erie problems. And so I think that it is important to start with talking to the people that have been affected and find out what are their needs and what are they looking for, what are their aspirations, and then take those ideas and take those aspirations and attach them to policy that is attached to funding. It's time for us to put our money where our mouth is and give people real opportunities for housing, education, health, and jobs that is equitable and is inclusive. As an African American, I can say it has not always been easy. as an African American to find a job here. It has not always been, or I felt inclusive. Many times I do walk and I'm in the room, and when I walk in the room, I'm the only Black person or person of color in the room. So I think that that is something that we have to address, because we're speaking about representation, and it's important for young people as well as all of us to see people who look like us that are in the places that we are at. I think that it is equally important to look at the facts that with 45% of people living in poverty, there are more than enough people who can speak to what the problems are and help us find the solutions that are right here in Erie.
Thank you, Marcus. And thank you to everyone for your first responses. On to our second question, which will come from Mr. Ron Oliver from the Erie Central Labor Council. That was a mouthful for me tonight.
I know,
Thanks,
I know.
Ron.
Hey, thank you, Jim, for putting this on, and good evening to all candidates, especially young candidates. I've been a union member for 33 years in the union, and we always support good candidates, put them in office. Before I got involved in the union, I was a military man for 8 years in the Coast Guard. When you're in the military, it's two different worlds. Being a civilian military, you don't have to worry about wages, or health care, or safety, or paid holidays. That's in the Uncle Sam's supposed to take care of you, which is good. But when I got out, I was fortunate to work in the union shop. And I didn't know nothing about unions, but I learned quickly that corporations and these employers, they don't give you nothing unless you fight for it. Learning the history about organized labor back in the 1800s, fighting for 40-hour work week, racism, paid holiday wages. People fought and died. A right to organize, a right collecting and bargain, having a seat at the table. So my question to you young people and candidates is, do you believe in right to organize and having a seat at the table for organized labor?
And the first response will come from Liz Allen.
I definitely believe in the right to organize. And 4 years ago, when I ran for the first time, I told at the Central Labor Council, when we were actually able to go and see people again instead of being all virtual. When I was a college student, I was 18 years old, and I got my first job at the newspaper at the morning news at that time. And I was a member of the union, and I made more money than any of my friends. I think one of my friends was working at Kentucky Fried Chicken. I don't know where everybody else was working. And I just did a quick calculation of what I was making in 1970. And as a college student, as an 18-year-old, I was making a lot more than $15 an hour. So I definitely believe in the right to organize. In fact, I would have had a job there right when I graduated from high school, because I'd shadowed there during the summer of my junior year of high school, but the newspaper was on strike, and they went on strike to get healthcare benefits. So I go way back. So definitely believe in the right to organize. So important. One of my brothers is involved in SEIU in Harrisburg. He's a public, he works for the Pennsylvania Department of Health. So no qualms there about saying definitely believe in it.
Right, thank you, Liz. Corey DiLoretto.
Yes. Hi again, everyone. It's very democratic. Democratic Party is the party of unions. So of course we would want to, represent, unions to our best ability. The gentleman earlier who spoke on the PRO-ACTS passage. It's critical to ensure, the voices of, working people are heard, and our nation's economy works, for all of us. Obviously not just, the wealthy few. As a Democrat, I definitely believe in organizations of unions. I think that's very, very critical to our democracy, and to the future of not only Erie, but the future of, America as a whole. We saw with what happened with General Electric, Wabtec taking over now. They tried to, the union representative in Erie here tried to organize, and their negotiations they weren't successul. So we saw all these jobs leave Erie, and they all went to Texas, where there isn't a union. But it's very, very critical And of course, I'm a strong proponent. You know, I was part of AFSCME, you know, Council 13, you know, working in the treasurer's office in the city of Erie. You know, I was a part of a union, you know, so you know, I benefited from the union. And we need to make sure that that stays in Erie. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Jasmine Flores.
Hello. I wholeheartedly support unions and the opportunity to organize. I've never had the privilege of being a union member or having employment offer that opportunity. As a young person, I think that if we had more union organizations within the fast food industry, hospitality industry, and healthcare industry, we might have more family sustainable wages. The unions help the American dream be able to have a 40-hour work week and buy a house. I, as a young person, don't have that opportunity, and I want the next generation to have that opportunity. So yes, I support unions. I support organizing unions. I'm an organizer in the community, so I wouldn't want to minimize anybody's ability to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. And I just to let you know, your connection is a little soft. So we lost your video, but we had your audio throughout there. Elspeth Cayley.
Thank you, Ron, Jim. Yes, of course, I support the right to organize. I'm a member of the Nonprofit Professional Employees Union. I support the PRO Act and down with right to work. I've been in the fight for 15 for pretty much the entire time it's been a fight for 15. I've stood on, you know, the lines with UE 506. I've brought them food, you know, fed them. I completely support our unions. Roseanne Barker is one of my greatest heroes. So yeah, totally believe in unions and the right to organize.
All right, thank you. Chuck Nelson.
Yeah, obviously a supporter of unions. I presume everyone in this forum ought to be. You know, and it's a picture of how the American dream happens. Great grandparents coming over here and them working in tough conditions. And then that's the thing that they pitch to their sons. You know, they pitch that to my grandfather. They tell him, hey, go get the union job. And then he ends up being a rep for the UAW. You know, and as the next generation rises up, you know, we've got both public and private unions. My uncle ran for the president of the IMA, a 600-person union that is one of the most diverse in the nation. My dad's a member of the SEIU. My mom was a rep for AFSCME, and my wife's a public school teacher, so she's PSEA. It is the thing that has sustained my family for generations. As a pastor, I got to talk to Elspeth about what the union is. She's in the nonprofit one because I don't know any pastors' unions, so I haven't personally been in them. But I understand the impact that it's made on really creating generations of the American dream in my family, and the way that it has brought us up from the first generations that have been here.
Thank you. Ken Tate.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Ron. I'm 100% in support of organizing, organized labor, organized workers. It's the history of labor in the United States is a passionate, sometimes bloody, violent, and massively important history. And a lot of people in our country don't realize the amount of pain, of effort went into the 40-hour work week even. We had to fight for the benefits that we are given and are now being slowly picked away. Even for people my age, people in my generation, who are often gig working, doing Uber, Postmates, Lyft, all of these small odd jobs for some people. But for most people, it's like a livelihood. It's what's supporting them. It's not just supplementary income. It's half of their income. It's the way that they're able to afford their rent and afford food to put on the table. And for places, for companies who don't offer the kind of opportunity for people to organize in those occupations, are not offering anything sustainable for the people, for their employees, for those independent contractors who are doing the jobs, doing the work for them. So I'm 100% in support of unions across the board.
Thank you, Ken. Maurice Troop.
Thanks, Jim. Many people in Erie know me as Mo from my athletic background. From my athletic background, I've learned that I know that great teams work together. That's where it all starts. One of my strengths from playing the quarterback position and leading the team to the championship is organizing talent. Okay. I've also been an educator for over 20 years. And I was a part of the teachers union in Erie, PA, in the Erie public school system. So I know that the union is very important. I believe in the union. I've seen it protect. They work. They stick together. But also, so I do believe in unions. But I believe that if unions and management can work together, that's when the world is a better place. That's when we win championships, and that's what it's really all about. Is let's win championships together. And I believe in unions.
Thank you, Marcus Ewell.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Oliver, I definitely wholeheartedly support unions and the right to organize. For me, it's personal. As the son of a cancer survivor, when my mother was stricken with cancer, it was the union that guaranteed that she kept her job. She was out for several months of work, and it was the union that made sure that we got through that tough time, that she received the pay, and that she was able to support us as much as she was able to. As a manager at the Erie County Public Library, I see how our professional and our clerical staff really depend upon the union to speak as a voice for them and for their rights in the workplace. And so I understand that it is very important for us to support and uphold union rights and the right to organize.
All right, thank you, Marcus. And I believe Roger had to step away for a moment, so we're going to jump ahead to our young Dem representative. Oh, you're here. Okay, all right. Thanks, Roger.
I don't know where.
I've got a list of faces over here, and it jumps around sometimes. So thanks for cutting back in here. Our next question will be, of course, from Roger Wolbert, for representing our LGBTQIA plus caucus. Roger, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, candidates. So the caucus came up with some questions the other day, and one of them it's around a strategy. So if you could be specific, that would be great. So the question is, what strategy would you use to include and engage the LGBTQIA plus organizations and community members in developing policy and legislation?
Roger, I think there are two things, and one is from your earlier question to the mayoral candidates. I was not aware until tonight that the police had the cultural competency training that the mayor mentioned, but that would be tremendous to have that as part of the training for city council, in addition to a lot of other training that we need. We're supposed to have civility training. I think we need implicit bias training. And in terms of policies, I think if we look at things with an equity and inclusion lens, no matter how we do that, if it's through a commission or just looking at ordinances that we pass, we should certainly be able to include that as a way we look at things. And the other thing we need to do is to have some type of, we don't have a liaison right now to the mayor's advisory council. We don't have somebody from city council who is a liaison to the LGBTQ advisory council that the mayor has. We don't have a liaison to, well, I guess I've kind of stepped into the role of the New Americans liaison, even though it's not on paper. So I think that would be a good starting place for us. So liaisons cultural competency training and an equity inclusion task force or commission that helps us examine what we do as council members to make sure that we're being inclusive. So anyhow, if you offer, I know that Sydney had mentioned the type of training that's out there. I want to know what training the mayor had. I think it was from Rich McCarty from the Mercyhurst and the Community United Church.
All right. Thank you, Liz. Corey DiLoretto, your response.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Well, a few ideas here. I would recommend that, all city employees, and the public, if they so choose, to participate in and attend educational symposiums are you hearing me here? Okay. Classes, to be given by an individual or a group of individuals, supported and chosen, of course, by Erie's LGBTQIA, plus leadership, and approved by, I want to get, EGN involved too. They're doing great things in the city. Of course, they could make it public, and also the city of Erie, should put it on their website and social media, press release, get everybody in the community involved if they, like I said, so choose. Public forums, open and honest, discussion, ongoing, inclusive discussion, with Erie's LGBTQIA plus, community and leaders. But I'm open to all ideas, really. The goal, the main goal is communication, with results. That's what we want to do. We want to be inclusive. We want to make sure everybody's voice is being heard. If they want it to be heard. After all, we do live in a democracy, right? So, Erie, with the mayor trying to include everyone now, we should really be doing that. We should make sure that we're leaders in this. In maybe Pennsylvania. We should really be starting to include everyone. And like I said, educational symposiums, excellent idea. And be more communicative. Maybe have a festival, things like that. I know a lot of the things in the city are being shut down now, but so that's just some ideas. But I would love to, like I said, discuss this more with everyone. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Corey. Jasmine's been having some technical difficulties, but we're going to give this a shot. Jasmine, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I think the question was the fourth question from the questionnaire. What strategies would you use to include and engage LGBTQIA plus organizations and community members? Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay. So personally, I think that we have to make sure that we're including and building relationships with the LGBTQIA plus community. I think that having phone calls, going to their community meetings, and making sure that tangible policy in place so that they can have the representation they need and deserve in all conversations and spaces will make them feel welcomed and included. I know as a minority woman, that's definitely not what I always feel when I'm in certain spaces. So I think that if we want to make sure that we're being honest and transparent within our community members, that we are definitely doing the work and not putting the work on other people. Sometimes you have a lack of information and transparency, and we say that we're asking these communities for their input, but who are you asking? Are you just asking the designated leader who might not necessarily be the leader that they put for their communities? I know that that's something that happens within the minority community. So I just think making sure that we're actually doing tangible relationship building and making sure that we're networking within our community is what we need to do to get everything that we want to occur within the LGBTQ community and all communities, honestly.
All right. Thank you, Jasmine. Elspeth Cayley, you're up.
Thank you for the question, Roger. I don't know what else I could say after everyone else has spoken here, but I'm always, a proponent of meeting people where they are. And like Jasmine said, you can't just pick one person out of a community and say they represent the entire community. We need to meet people where they are, and we need to hear across the board diverse voices, because no one person represents me and no one person represents you or Jasmine or whoever. So, and I know there is the council, but I think that the council could be doing better job. I agree with Liz that, that there should be a liaison from city council to that council. And I don't know how it works, but I hope the council is being, replaced, that that's not the same people over the past 4 years that the Schember administration has been holding these meetings. I hope that we have, some rotation of members so we get different ideas and we get different perspectives.
All right, thank you. Chuck Nelson.
Yeah. As we talk about liaison stuff, there's been some other cities that have implemented commissions on these things where the council and a local civil rights board and mayor staff bring together a board to make sure that everybody's included. I'm not on a lot of those going to be as a straight white guy. There's a lot of them where I probably shouldn't be the representative. I should be the one just simply listening. And as I've built bridges in the community, I'm generally a person that has listened a lot. They were talking about the training that was scheduled for diversity, and that was scheduled before the escalated conflict that happened in May. And so it was always a little bit of an interesting thing that the diversity training was with someone that was more representative of the LGBTQI background. But I haven't been through that training. But the guy that does it, his book's on my shelf, and we've most of my experience with a lot of these guys is working in the downtown hospitality business. And I've sat there and talked to a lot of them for hours. The bridges that get built in practicing that hospitality. And as a pastor, in both cases, there's a matter of standing with people and building those bridges and getting those connections. So some of that gets leaned on in my pastoral background. Some of it gets leaned on from bartending at 1201 for so many years. That's a lot of where those relationships end up coming from. But it's a matter of being the ears that can listen, build those relationships, and make the places for them at the table to make sure that people are not just being included, but that they are being represented and speaking for themselves well.
Thank you, Chuck. Ken Tate.
Thank you for that question, Roger. I think that's very important, and it represents exactly what we need to do for all of our communities, especially with reaching out to our LGBTQIA plus community. We need to have our council members involved, and we need to have them visible to our community in the events that our communities having, in organizational meetings, and we should establish them ourselves, meetings to involve our LGBTQIA plus leaders in the decisions that we're making for consultation, along with the other members, community leaders in our city, to really bear down on the priorities that they need in relation to everything that we're trying to do. We can really make these very minute, fine details and say that they're important, but when we take them out of context, there's a lot of wishing and hoping, and not enough of the actual tangible policy that needs to be put into place. And I think that including our LGBTQIA plus community in those council-sponsored meetings to really focus on what their priorities are, what our priorities are, and understand what the context is that we need to make progress. I think that's the way that we'll be able to develop holistic, inclusive policies.
Thank you, Ken. Mo Troop.
Thanks, Jim. As I stated earlier, my whole background is basically about getting teams, being a part of teams, and getting teams to work together and to win. From since I was a small child to college level, and I agree with Mr. Tate about forming boards and committees and things like that when it comes to the LGBTQIA community. That's important because I've had personal friends and family that are a part of that community myself. So that's very important. Also agree with Marcus Ewell when he said we need Erie solutions for Erie problems. So I think we do start at home, like as he said. And if we find that what we have here at home isn't working, then we need to look abroad also. Don't be afraid to do that. And most importantly, one of the things that's really important to me is that all voices are heard. And when I say that, right at the table with that is the LGBTQIA community. So there, definitely we need training. And as I said, through my educational background, I have organized trainings and things like that. So I would definitely be on board with doing that. And their voice is the most important thing.
Thank you. Marcus Ewell.
Well, being that my last name is Yule, it seems that I'm copying what everybody is saying, but that is not the case. I'm so glad that we are all thinking, and whoever is elected from this group of people, I am sure we are ready to move Erie forward because this is a intelligent and conscientious group of people that are running. I'll lend my voice to what was said. I agree wholeheartedly that training is important. I think training for city officials, city employees, city council is important because that way, once we are trained, we can't use the excuse that we didn't know. That removes that excuse of not being aware of what we need to know in terms of individuals in our community who are identified as LGBTQ. I think that another piece of this is when we say everybody, I mean, let's bring everybody to the table, as was said, not just bringing certain leaders that may have previously been designated, but bringing everyone to the table who has a vested interest in supporting and the LGBT community. I think that going forward, we have to distinguish that the city council does not act as lone rangers. It is a team of 7, as Mr. Troop indicated. And I think it is important that all 7 of those members demonstrate a willingness and an openness to communicate, be informed, and both be informing of what the city council is doing to purport and promote success in our community, including LGBTQ in that community, because they are no different. They are us. We are all one. This is Erie City, and then we need to move forward as such.
Thank you, Marcus. Our final question of the City Council Candidates Forum will come from our Erie County Young Dems and Simonique Dietz. Simonique?
Hi, everyone. One question I wanted to ask is, what changes would you make to the existing city budget in regards to the minority community, especially with the schools that have been shut down, that are obviously based on the teacher-student ratio is still very much needed. What are some changes you would like to offer in that category?
And we'll start again with Liz Allen.
Well, the city budget doesn't affect the school budget, but I think one of the things, separate budgets in the city of Philadelphia, the city actually operates the school budgets. But I just saw an interesting story out of Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia Inquirer. We've had some of the mayoral candidates and some of the city council candidates talking about community benefit agreements and tax abatements. And there's a new report that came out from Good Jobs. Let me see what it was called. the Good Jobs report, and it looked at tax abatements and how those have actually hurt the Philadelphia schools. I think it was to the tune of like $68 million. And when we're talking about LRTA, you know, we have the school district, the county and the city all came together to come up with the LRTA ordinance. I actually voted against LRTA, which didn't make me, I don't think the mayor was too happy with me about that, but I wanted more data on how that actually would impact our budget and how it's impacted it so far. We have a new LRTA program, but what about those other properties that were under LRTA when they came back on? So that's not a very specific answer to your question, but I think tax abatements are one thing that we would have to look at. I am a huge budget nerd, and so I look at that carefully. That's one of those questions I probably would have to noodle a little bit more and come up with a better answer, but I would say abatements are one thing that we have to look at in terms of when we cooperate with the school district and the county, how does that impact public education?
Thank you, Liz. Corey DiLoretto.
Yes. Hi again, everyone. So what I would, I was going around, door to door. I've been doing this for quite some time now, and this is something that came up, quite often, particularly with, young parents. I remember speaking with a young mother right across the street from, Irving School, which was shut down, and of course, right down the street there, Roosevelt is shut down too. And there's the schools are disappearing. So, and a lot of people get involved, on my social media, particularly on the Facebook page that I have. And I like to pose issues that affect everyone here, in the city, just to get people's ideas, their thoughts, opinions, questions, suggestions, how we can make this place better for them, their family, us here as a whole in this community. So, what people have said when I pose the issue, what should we do with the $79.1 million of federal funding coming in? And so a lot of people said that, we should make sure that we have, a state-of-the-art school, and so I think that would definitely be, in the running for the money. I don't know if it would cost that much to do that. But I do know that the Erie, the community college should definitely be, within city limits and not the county. I would be a very strong proponent for that, particularly because I think, quite frankly, that, it affects people more in the city, these vocational, fields rather than people out, in the county. We're more concentrated, more populated. And I think so that's something we have to explore more. But if you want to continue to speak with me on this, anyone, I would really, appreciate it and love to speak with you on any of my social media. Corey DiLoretto, DiLoreto, as you see in the back right here. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Jasmine Flores.
All right, I might need some of the question repeated. I know you said something about the budgets affecting the school system. So can you repeat it, please?
Simonique, you still with us?
Sure. My question was, what changes would you make to the existing budget in regards to especially with the schools in the lower income communities being shut down, with the student teacher ratio, we still need to open schools in order to teach the students effectively. And so how would you adjust the budget in order to make that change, I guess, more speedy, because it's been years since they've been shut down.
Right. Like Liz Allen said, the school district budget and the city council budget are two different budgets. I do know that we currently have to borrow money every year to balance our budget as a city. I know that if we had more tax base and revenue to help us be able to combat the current internet's going out. If we had more revenue to help combat the actual deficit we face every year, we wouldn't have to borrow money. I know that if we tried to incentivize getting teachers who look like the students in our school district, we might be able to get them to be homeowners. But there has to be some type of program, whether that's us helping our community members become teachers so that they can then feel invested in our community. That's an option, but our budget is already how it is, and there's not much we can do with it unless we're talking about cutting pensions, because a big portion of our budget goes towards pensions.
Thank you, Jasmine. Elspeth Cayley.
Thank you, Simony. Well, unfortunately, we have a lot of flight to the suburbs, and because of that flight, we have less of a property tax base in the city. And the property taxes are a huge chunk of how we fund our schools. And our schools are becoming less and less fairly funded because we have less homeowners within the city. And to Jasmine's point, I know we can't mandate that city workers, like the firefighters, the police department, the teachers live in the city, but if there are ways we can incentivize them to buy their homes in the city instead of out in the suburbs somewhere, then that way we can increase our property tax base. I know that, we fought tooth and nail to have stipulations put in LRTA, the tax abatement program, because we knew that these new properties that were being built, they weren't going to be paying property taxes for a decade, and our schools are suffering now. The administration wanted a clean LRTA. We wanted a LRTA that included benefits to the community members, whether it was jobs, whether it was developing mixed income housing, whether it was, giving back to the community in some way. Maybe not 100% LRTA, maybe, not pushed all the way north of the Bayfront, it's just something to protect the city. But they say, the building won't happen, the construction won't come without these tax abatement programs. I don't know if there's anything that we can do about LRTA when 4 new people or 3 new people are on city council, but I will advocate for things like, ending preemption, which prevents us from having local control over our wages, over, whether we can mandate where people live who work for the city, etc. So I'll do all I can to make sure that we are not closing any more schools and that our kids get fair funding for the schools that we do still have open in the city.
Thank you, Elspeth. Chuck Nelson.
Yeah, so I mean, LRTA has been brought up a couple of times, and the whole reason we have that abatement program is because with a 1.165% tax on buildings, nobody wants to build in Erie. That's the issue. We have to abate that tax for anyone to build, or we could change the whole tax structure to a land value tax the land instead of the buildings, so that people build here again. That's what we've seen success for in other places. It would be different than abatements. And our schools are allowed to use this program too. That's something Harrisburg doesn't have. There's a revenue source of the budget problem that we keep circling around. There's the revenue fixing. But let's look at the spending side of that for some stuff. Like I don't know if I mentioned it, but I coach wrestling down at the Martin Luther King Center. I work with the novice wrestlers. I'm walking around there saying, hey, get them championships, you get them scholarships. And I'm just trying to pump that idea. I'm bring my little 11-year-old, really basic little white girl into that room and let her roll with the kids. And it's a nice little cultural experience, trying to broaden her perspectives, right? And we're using wrestling mats from Greenville High School that were hand-me-downs that we got like 8 years ago. Like the investment in the community centers is dramatically stagnant. When you, like Liz had pointed out, she said something about being a budget nerd. You go down to the heritage room at the library. I think Liz and I are maybe some of the only people signing that little box to sign in on it. And you go back to the budget 30 years ago, you could see the police budget existing as 28% of the city's budget, that we had, only 7 lieutenants instead of 17, that we had, what was the other big thing with that? Oh, we didn't have SWAT back then. There were so many expenses that we didn't have 30 years ago for a city of 120,000. And at the time, we were putting $500,000 into community and economic development. That hasn't changed. We've gone up to a $40 million police budget, and our community and economic development had a slight increase in like 2018, I think it is. Schember did bump it up a little bit, but it's been stagnant for 30 years. I mean, if it was to keep up with anything else, the community needs that economic development. The next generation needs that development. We need the investment. We need to put the money where the mouth is so that the communities that have been left behind can see a reversal on that.
Thank you, Chuck. Ken Tate.
Yeah, Chuck really hit the nail on the head. There needs to be investment in our communities in order for us to support the students, the families who have really been affected by the turn to virtual learning. They're no longer in school. Once schools open up, things will be different. But I mean, there's still the effects of being in a virtual learning program for as long as they have been. And the effects of working from your home in a community, that you're separated from your regular daily life, your developmental life, and community building activities with your friends, with your family, with going out to see your family and everything like that. Investment in our community centers is like paramount to making sure that our students are able to get back into school and learn at the pace that they were able to learn at before everything had shut down and things had changed. I think that a lot of the focus for community development block grants are put into redevelopment, and they should be focused in the programming and benefits that community centers offer, that since the Martin Luther King Center and Booker T. Washington Center have stepped up to provide for the lack in COVID funding, COVID distribution funding, COVID distribution production. Like we have to support those foundational parts of our community with the funding that they need to provide for the communities that they're providing for. And that will support our students and families in their futures.
Thanks, Ken. Mo Troop.
Thanks, Jim. This conversation just kind of turned into education, and I've been working through this pandemic the whole time in Erie's public schools as a principal. First of all, I want to commend those educators that are on here tonight, whether in a private or a public setting, for the job they've done. Also, one of the trainings that we talked about through the school district was that there's going to be something called the COVID slide. So because kids are going to be behind when they come back, they could lose 1 to 2 years, their educational process. So the longer they're out, the further they get back. And Mr. Tate, we did just start bringing our kids back to the Erie's public schools, into the schools. So we have to invest in our youth, because if we don't, who's going to take over the city when we're all done leading? Who's going to run our city? So we have to invest in our youth. I believe I agree with Corey Dillarito when he said get ideas from the community. I also realize that as a city councilman, I'm gonna have to work together with the other council people to come up with the ideas. But one of the things that I always say is that all voices matter. So we do want to go outside and ask the community, what do you think should be done with the money? And then finally, let's go forward with the mentality that if we plant flowers on West 38th and Green Garden, we also plant them on East 5th and Wallace. So everybody's included.
Thank you. Marcus Ewell.
So as so much has been said, I agree with every perspective. I think that once we get our problem under control with our budget, I think that we do have to make a real investment in our youth. Having worked in a community center for several years in Erie, I realized that community centers bridge gaps in our educational system. I realized that there are a lot of soft skills that they just don't learn either at home or at school. They learn those in those community centers. It really is a bridge builder towards success. So we do need to make that a priority, because there's robust programming that can be taking place at our community centers that will help our children in the inner city make strides towards success and real opportunities, get them prepared for real opportunities. I think that that is very important as we are seeing a move away from a priority in our education system, making sure that it is equitable. We need to make sure that then we as city council members are doing everything we can to fill those gaps, to make sure that nothing is going lacking and that our kids have a fair chance. I also think that there's this annual cookie cutter mentality in Erie that we've got to move away from, realizing that the needs change every year. Sometimes multiple times a year, the needs change. We've got to make sure that our budget at least reflects annually what the needs will be and anticipate how we can help make those changes in the years to come, so that we can all have a chance to succeed and give our children and our youth that same chance, if not better.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that sentiment as well. I would like to, that concludes our round robin of questioning, but we're not done yet, everyone. We have closing statements from our candidates, and I'd like to thank Mayor Schember and Sydney Zimmerman for sticking along for this important conversation. A lot of good ideas taking place in this forum tonight, and we're hearing, among these Democratic candidates, it's not surprising that we hear some agreement on these issues, but for the candidates out there who feel like it's a little repetitive, it's important for the audience to and the voters to hear it from your voice, to hear you say it, and to know that you mean it when it comes out of your mouth. It's an important part of this campaign, even if the essence of what we're saying is all the same. We'll move into our closing statements, and each candidate will have 90 seconds, and we'll begin once again with Liz Allen. Liz, take it away.
Okay, it wouldn't be me talking if I didn't say, one of my friends from the newspaper used to say, Liz, you have more than anyone I know. So I'm going to say right away, I have Catholic guilt because my last name begins with an A. And Marcus pointed out he was the last one to, Marcus Yule his last name begins with Y. So sorry about that. And I also am drawing on my journalism experience. I like to be a storyteller. So at Thanksgiving time, I was telling my daughter-in-law about the infamous incident at City Council where somebody on council said that, well, you know what he said, that Dane really knows how to push buttons. My 9-year-old granddaughter is blind, and she overheard that conversation. And a few minutes later, I heard her saying, Grandma's a button girl. And I didn't know what she was talking about. And then I realized she had heard me talking about, the guy who said I was pushing buttons. What I want to say is after this forum tonight, I am confident that whether I'm on city council or I'm in the audience, I don't have to worry about anybody saying that, being critical that way of me. And I want to show you the hat that my friend just sent me. I just opened it up before the thing started. Excuse me, I'm speaking in Kamala Harris's words. So thank you for letting me speak. Thank you for asking such great questions. Thank you, Jim, for organizing this. I was so nervous, and I'm not nervous anymore. I have so much hope for Erie and for council. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. And is Corey DiLoretto still with us?
Yes, thank you. Well, before I begin, I would just say, thank you, Jim, for this opportunity to the Erie Dems, all the candidates here, like Mr. Yule said, a very, very intelligent group, and we'd be lucky to have any of them. Honestly, we really would. Well, here's my closing statement. So what I want to do is, I want to bring, open and honest communication to City Council. To be honest, I believe it lacks transparency, and I want to hear the voices of those who want to be heard. After all, we live in a democracy, right? So, I mean, your voice matters, and your voice should be heard and heeded too. Not forgotten and pushed aside, as it seems like, what some of us were saying earlier today, it seems so. To me, if you had any questions, concerns, comments, reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. I'm on social media now, as I, mentioned earlier. And if I were elected city councilman, I would, of course, keep this open communication policy. And that's what you'll get if I were elected city councilman. because we're all in this together. You know, we all have a voice, and our voices should be heard. And like I said, heeded too. So a vote for me is a vote for progress. You know, a vote for me is really a vote for yourself, because, you know, the primary is Tuesday, May 18th. I respectfully ask that, you know, you get involved, and I respectfully ask for your vote. So just one more thing, you know, I want us to bring back, you know, this is key. I want us to bring back our founding fathers' ideal of democratic transparency to Erie. You know, we can't wait for change to happen within the government from the top down. We actually have to make it happen for ourselves, you know, from the bottom up. So the days of waiting and hoping are over. The days of action and involvement is here now. Climb aboard. We're taking control of the ship. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Jasmine Flores.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Flores. I'm third on the ballot for Erie City Council. This will be the second time that I'm running. The issues that I ran on, such as renters protection, family sustainable wages, and equitable development, are issues that my generation needs to be addressed in order for us to stay here and be the next generation of working class residents in the city of Erie. So I hope that people start participating in the local election process. It's May 18th this year. You have until May 3rd to register to vote. We are not going to fix our city unless we're all involved and all being vocal on what we want to see happen in our community. So I just think that we as a whole need to definitely see the potential that we have to steer the ship correct with our city's future, so that we can be a economy that sustains itself if we ever receive another global pandemic scare. Our tourism industry was not a good enough industry or economy system for us to actually sustain our community, and this pandemic has showed us that we need to not put all of our eggs in one basket. So I definitely want us to start thinking about the Green New Deal and reusable energy for Pennsylvania to be the leaders, and Erie to be one of the first to start that process. And you can check out my Facebook page at Flores for Erie, and we have canvas opportunities if you would like to get involved, so please contact me.
Thank you, Jasmine. Elspeth Cayley.
Thanks, Jim. I am a working class renter, and I appreciate the struggles that come from living in poverty. I always root for the underdog, and if I'm elected, I assure voters that I'll work to include everyone's input, and I'll be transparent and do my best to create policies that put residents' needs over big business and wealthy nonprofits, because I love Erie. I'm number 2 on the ballot, and I hope to have your vote on May 18th. And also, like Jasmine said, I'm also on Facebook as Kaylee for City Council. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Elspeth. Chuck Nelson.
These forums are always great because they give everybody a chance to talk, to share the words that they have. But I want to share with you some of what I actually do. You know, I'm married. We're raising 2 daughters downtown here. You know, we made it a community of choice to live in the West Bayfront. We love the diversity of it. And as a neighbor, I started a neighborhood association, make sure that all of West Bayfront was included in a neighborhood association after the fire on 11th Street, noticing that a lot of the neighborhood associations were based around those historic red lines. I wanted to make sure everyone was included. I coach wrestling at the Martin Luther King Center. I lead Porch Fest. We started that back up this year. I tried to get Mo, but he's too popular now. And we're expanding that to all of the West Bayfront. 40% of our musicians this year were people of color. And we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just in the nicest parts of the West Bayfront, pushed it into areas that had broader diversity. I'm a committee member for the Democratic Committee. My career, I started a church in the 16501 zip code, that zip code with the lowest median household income. an entrepreneurial effort, an effort to balance budgets, but not like for-profit businesses do, not to balance a budget to make money, but to do good. We've built a community that transcends race and class. When people here want to talk about people being disenfranchised, I'm the one getting them off the streets, not just by words or marching, but action. Dozens of guys we've gotten off the streets this year, or not this year, in the last couple of years. My education, I'm 2 classes left on a doctorate in missional leadership, where Mr. Rogers did his master's. Classes like ethnography, studying people groups, leadership, communal discernment, race classes, plunging into neighborhood, public proclamation, adaptive leadership, a dissertation on how to lift up values of the oppressed to create a more diverse community. If you want to see the words that we have to share, let me just say, I have a lot of actions to back them up. And on city council, I promise you, I will be a man of action if I get your vote. You can see more of my ideas and plans at chucknelson.info. Find me on Facebook, Chuck Nelson for City Council. Or, I mean, just knock on my door. I live at 646 West 9th Street. I'll just talk to anyone.
Thanks, Chuck. Ken Tate.
Thanks, Jim. And thank you, everybody, for coming, for being involved, for wanting to participate in this process. And it's like monumentally important that we all stay engaged, involved, and knowledgeable of the people that plan to represent us, because if we don't stay knowledgeable of those people, they will take advantage of the positions that they're in. We can't allow the types of politics of people who work along with their the people that they know, the status quo, the backdoor discussions that aren't transparent or accessible to the public at large. We need to make sure that we are specifically speaking to our constituents at all times. We need to make sure that they understand what we're saying. We need to let them know that we are working for them, and we will do everything that we can to protect them. Our residents they are the foundation of our city, and we can't let them be put aside for the sake of development downtown. We have to remember that tax-free development comes on the backs of the people who are always here, who have paid for years to be here. And we need to remember that we are providing them with the protection that they need and the representation that they need. So my name is Kendrick Tate. You can find me on Facebook, Kendrick Tate for City Council. I'm number 8 on your ballot, so you can mark 8 for Tate and make sure that we have people, I know that we have people who are willing to do everything that they can to make this city be everything that it can be and reach its potential. And I hope that you'll have me and vote for me to be in that seat and support our city.
Thanks, Ken. In the words of Chuck Nelson, the ever popular Mo Troop.
Some people would say, if you want Mo or more, then vote for Mo. Through my musical background, one of the songs that we play, Temptations had a famous song, was called Get Ready in the 60s. And my Erie being a homegrown Erie product has gotten me ready for this moment of leadership. And being the nephew of Erie's first Black city councilman, Larry Meredith, I've been hearing about this kind of stuff my whole life. Also, my grandmother, Odessa Meredith, was well known in the community. Many people told me about how she fed them, clothed them. So my family is a family of service. I'm carrying on that legacy. Bruno Mars had a song called Treasure. And what I hear from everybody here tonight is that Erie is a treasure to all of us. I believe in greatness. I believe in Erie's greatness. I believe in our strong roots. I never want to forget our roots. But with me, we'll move Erie forward too, because we got to move forward. I believe in all voices matter. I don't care if you're on Glendale Avenue, where I grew up at, to West 38th Street. If you want Mo, vote for Mo Troop. Hit me on Facebook, Mo Troop for Erie City Council, also motroop.com. The rest of you guys, you did a great job. If I'm elected, I will be reaching out to every one of you because you guys got some great ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Marcus Ewell.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. To everyone that is listening, I don't have a lot of pomp and circumstance. I am who I am, and all I can do is offer that to you. All I am saying is that through policy and willingness to work with others on council, that I'm saying that we need to invest in small businesses here in Erie, and that we need to invest in every corner of our city, not just in certain places, not just in places that sit on a bubble, but every corner of our city. I'm saying that we should advocate for greater access to opportunities for all residents, making sure that those are equitably distributed throughout our city, that we have balanced development. And I'm saying that we all should make a commitment to unity so that we can continue to have open dialogue that will promote progress in our city for all of us. You know, I believe that collective success is a lie unless we all win. And with 90,000 plus people in this city, I believe there are more than enough of us to get the job done. So I'm saying that if all of us are saying, let's move Erie forward, I'm simply saying, let's do it together. So you can reach me at Marcus Yule for Erie City Council at YouTube, excuse me, I saw it in the corner, at Facebook.com. Also, by email at marcusyule4erie@gmail.com. I love the opportunity to continue to have these dialogues with you more intimately and personally, but I look forward to working for this city and taking us as far as the next 4 years can take us. I look forward to working with everyone that we could possibly work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. And again, I want to thank all of our candidates for taking some time off the campaign trail this evening. Our mayoral candidates, Mayor Joe Schember, Tom Spagel, Sydney Zimmerman, our city council candidates, Liz Allen, Corey DiLoretto, Jasmine Flores, Elspeth Cayley, Chuck Nelson, Kendrick Tate, Mo Troop, and Marcus Yule. This was a passionate conversation. I think the voters of Erie certainly have some difficult decisions to make in this primary because there are a lot of good candidates. And again, I'd like to thank all of our presenters: Selena King for the Erie County Democratic Party Black Caucus, Jack Lee and Ron Oliver from the Erie Crawford Central Labor Council, Roger Wolbert representing the LGBTQIA plus caucus of the Erie County Democratic Party, and Simonique Dietz representing the Erie County Young Dems. Thank you all so much for your time, for your efforts, for your commitment, and for putting yourselves out there on behalf of the party and on behalf of the residents of the city of Erie. So for myself, Jim Wirtz, and the entire Erie County Democratic Committee, thank you all so much, and tune in tomorrow night at 5:30 on our YouTube channel for the Erie City School Board Candidates Forum, the final forum in our 3-night series this week. Thanks and have a great evening.